Hey there, it's author and attorney Kelly O'Connell with Knockout Radio, offering analysis and warnings of the stupidity of leftism, one podcast at a time. And if you happen to be on the left, if you happen to be liberal, I won't apologize so much as ask you to listen with an open mind, and if you disagree, leave a comment. If you agree, leave a comment. Oh, and can you smash down the subscribe button so we can get a little more coverage of these ideas? All right. Today's show is on woke and the illusion that the woke are this mighty army, this mighty band that has arisen up to enlighten everybody, and the rest of us just to have to sit there and take it. And my title for today is Elites Brainwashed Liberals into Fighting for Vague Concepts Instead of Success or Even Survival. We'll get back to that. But first, let's get over to our weird news. And I got a couple of stories that are associated with prison. And the first one just came out June 27th, 2021. Title of the story, God Told Me to Come Here. Guy is bald-headed and has maybe a little bit of a confused look on his face. Louisiana man arrested after getting high and driving to prison. Believe it or not. And this is in Monroe, Louisiana, shortly after midnight on Saturday, June 27th. So 2 days ago, a deputy with the Ouachita Parish Sheriff's Office responded to a complaint at the front gate of the Ouachita Correctional Center, and when deputies arrived, they were pointed towards a car in the parking lot that belonged to 35-year-old Bobby Koch, like the Koch brothers, I guess, Bobby Koch. When deputies approached Koch, he allegedly got out of the car and stated, "God has told me to come here." When officers asked Koch if he was high, he replied stating that he got high in methamphetamine before going up there. He then reportedly stated God had told him to go and get his family out of OCC, Ouachita Correctional Center. So, was he surprised when the deputies put him in handcuffs, searched his vehicle, and found a backpack with a suspected bag of meth, which he claimed ownership of? He was then escorted inside OCC and booked on one count of possession of a CDS to a level 2 narcotic. So, all right, pretty dumb, huh? Don't listen to the drugs. Don't call drugs your god. Yeah, here's another story. Prison guards didn't notice after killer beheaded cellmate, and this is, of course, in California. And March 2019, California prison guards found, after a while, that a self-styled Satanist had tortured and decapitated his killer cellmate, and it wasn't until hours later that officers at Corcoran State Prison discovered Luis Romero dead inside the cell he shared with 31-year-old Joshua Osuna. He is accused of making a knife and decapitating and dissecting Romero, removing an eye, a finger, and a portion of his lung. Was he making some sort of a soup or what? But anyway, he has faces covered with tattoos, of which you can't even really make them out because they're all dark. But Romero, who had spent 27 years in prison, was placed in a cell with Osuna upon arrival from Mule Creek State Prison, and he had been convicted of a second-degree murder after fatally shooting a woman in Compton when he was a teenager. And Osuna, the Satanist, was serving life for the murder and torture of a 37-year-old Yvette Pena, and he mocked their family. He mocked her family when they were going into court. And so Osuna was eventually found wearing a necklace made of Romero's body parts. How is this possible? He posed with the body, cutting Romero's face on either side of his mouth to resemble a Joker-like grin. And So anyway, how is it possible that he's able to do all this stuff and nobody notices? That's the craziest thing. All right, so there's your 2 prison weird stories, and you have to admit they are weird. All right, let's get here, and this is a little bit, what do you call it? It's a little, not obscure, not obtuse, but it is a little bit hard to describe. We can do it, though. Why does everyone today seem unhappy? And this is going to be an article at the Canada Free Press, of course. And one of the truly shocking and sad developments is how leftist social awareness guides, the people that they're out there teaching others how to react to horrible stuff, how they learn to train the credulous, the easily persuaded into believing that concepts are more important than character and traditional goals. All right, here's my point today. We've gotten to the place in our society where the traditional ideas of success, getting married, having a family, supporting your family, making money, maybe become a millionaire or becoming famous somehow, you're an athlete or whatever, or just wanting to be a good member of your church, being a humble person who's there for their friends and family, that doesn't cut it anymore. And the reason is because we're woke now. And how did it happen? Well, you know the story. You can see it right now. By raising awareness. In other words, by propaganda. The basis historically is Marxism. And the reason that Marxism is always popular is it describes an entirely different worldview than the West has done through its default operating system of Christianity. And further, Marxism condemns virtually every important biblical idea, replacing these with sham answers. And one of the reasons that Marxism doesn't work is because it comes in and says, capitalism is bad, you're taking advantage of people, you're not caring for the poor, you're stealing from them. And then over the years they brought in all kinds of different things through critical race theory and critical theory and stuff. So we've got all this giant victim class now, right? But these woke folks who've been trained or have now descended upon our society to extract their grievous toll in honor of their neo-cult, their new religion. So how often have you sat there and thought to yourself, by the way, how strange leftist standards are? One day, a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and there's some gay people, and sure, there's babies that are born deformed, but pretty much everybody knows their role. But that's gone now. You have all kinds of, I think it's like 30 different sexual varieties. And you hear all kinds of words thrown around that really don't mean anything to you. Like being cisgendered, being non-binary. People get sex changes and then they go date the person who is now the same gender, whereas before they could have just dated that person without getting a sex change. You see what I'm saying? It's just so hard to keep up with this. So do these people who talk down to us, who tell what woke means, tell us what critical race theory is, tell us how we've oppressed other people, how white people are inherently racist, and that anybody who's ever done anything in their history going back to childhood, that is a violation of these new standards, that person is going to be erased. They're going to lose their job. They're going to probably have to leave town, kind of a situation. That's called cancel culture. Where does it come from? Do they look down at the people who disagree with them and think what dummies we are? Yes. Now, you can trace this idea back to Gnosticism, which was a movement amongst the people around the Middle East, and especially in the area around where Jesus had lived and such, people that lived out in the desert. Valentinus had a Gnostic camp, and these are happening a couple hundred years after Christ. But what they believed in, they didn't accept Christ's explanation of salvation by faith. They believed in salvation by knowledge. So, as you can see today, the people that are running this society claim to have secret, special knowledge about gender, about race, about capitalism, about immigration, if you will, about energy, about so many different things. And they either have this knowledge or they're faking it, right? So one of the things that I want to focus on in this, and this is not going to be a long broadcast. I think yesterday was 27. I want to keep this between 10 and 15. But here's what I want you to focus on. This idea that, for example, although we need energy, we're no longer going to be a society that goes out and just gets energy. What we have to do is make sure that we're reducing the carbon footprints. So that means that this global warming issue has become this giant gorilla in the room and has taken over. So in this country, we've shut down the Keystone Pipeline. We've shut down federal drilling, and it's really impacted the bottom line. And I'm telling you, this is an idea. It's not proved science. Now, you might flip around like a freshly caught fish, but when I say that, but it is a fact. And there's a guy I'd like you to look up called Bjorn Lomborg, whose specialty is in global warming. And he said, if you play this thing out the way it is now, the way that we're being told things are going to change, what you're going to end up with is a slight change in temperature. That's it. And that's like in 100 years. There's not going to be a flooding of oceans. There's not going to be just a complete drying up of the planet. And even right now when we're having a heat wave, well, you see behind it was almost a flash flood in this area. So what you've got is individuals who have been trained up into being woke, and they don't consider, for instance, that the military is important. The military is only important if they're woke, if they bring in transgendered people, if they use the right pronouns. Now, you might say to yourself, well, what difference does that make if we're fighting for our life with the Chinese? And but the answer is, in these people's minds, that's become the number one thing. So think about it. A country, a society that used to have specific goals and a pretty healthy, a pretty happy society with some, no perfect society exists. So there was, some people were not happy and some people were not treated right. But overall, we had a very successful and happy society. It was so good that people from around the world wanted to move there. And I don't know if we're like that anymore. But we're no longer worried about economics. We're worried about, like I say, global warming, number one. Number two, we're worried about sharing the wealth. We're worried about not taking unfair advantage of other countries, blah, blah, blah. So you've got a situation where the reason that we used to think about being alive, when we used to feel like we were fighting for survival every year, that's been changed. And we're not talking about having families so that we can have healthy kids to raise up for the new generation, because people are caught up in gender and being gay and, let's face it, kinky, and the internet full of porn and everything. So in one area after another, we've walked away from the standards of the Bible that the foundation of the West was built on. And now we're caught up in all these theories that are somehow related to Marxism. But instead of being salt of the earth and prove for millennia, thousands and thousands of years, we've got these German philosophical ideas from Marx and his buddies. So they want to build up a generation of social justice warriors who go from being pesky pets, to toxic, to then dangerous. And you know how these type of things go when you have a movement in the society, like in China, when they had the Cultural Revolution. A lot of people ended up getting killed. Is that where we're headed? We're told white people are bad. Does that mean white people need to move away? We're told that global warming is taking over everything. So do we have to really shut everything down and go back and live like cavemen, cave people? So, look, this is my feeling. If we don't stand up to this stuff, it is going to destroy the culture, and it's halfway there already. And who's gaining? There's so many unhappy people out there. Comedians can't tell jokes. A man can't give a woman a compliment. Boy, your dress looks nice, or your hair looks good today, or anything. You can't say anything about gays or people's race or anything. And how is this making society better? I got to ask you. Becoming super race culture conscious, becoming super focused on the victims. There's a lady who went to the Olympic tryouts, and she's American, a black lady, and she came in third, and so she was about to get on the podium. Then they started playing the national anthem. So like a sulking baby, she turned away and turned her back towards the sound. And she wore some sort of a shirt over her face about race. So is that why she's there representing the United States, to attack the United States and claim to be a victim, even though she's one of the elite athletes in the world? All right, so here's some points to ponder. This is a war against the Bible for authority, because that's where we came from. So therefore you end up with a new religion. The old one has been rejected, and it brooks no opposition. And we've all seen that. You cannot disagree with these people. Number two, the roots go back to the Frankfurt School and German Marxism. And these guys relocated during World War II, realized when they saw America that it would never be overthrown the way Marx said. So they started trying to figure out how to get it into schools and how to get it into institutions, and they succeeded, because all our institutions are now leftist. Another thing, logic and science have been traded for iconoclasm and consensus. Iconoclasm is to destroy idols. So we see in critical race theory, for example, science is said to be racist. The Enlightenment is racist. So we throw logic and science out the window. That's where we're headed, folks. Now, each major PC movement, anthropomorphic global warming, critical race theory, gender bending, whatever it is that you're into, Marxism as applied to economics, these are already disproved. But they're used to fight against our tradition, the Bible, capitalism, constitutionalism, rule of law. They're all being attacked. And if they win, there's going to be nobody else in the world to stand up for the downtrodden around the world. The goal, by the way, is world Marxist domination. Everything else, and remember this, of the stuff you're fighting for today, if you're part of the woke generation, is not going to be fought over in the future. It's whatever they need to get to the next step. So they pretend to be for women, they pretend to be for gays, they pretend to be for, you name it, immigrants, but all of those people will be trampled on the way to getting to Marxism, world Marxism. Now, how did this ultimately occur? My argument is it's just like Eve in the garden. She was offered knowledge, and she became very lustful for knowledge. She bit the apple, and she ruined it for everybody else, and unfortunately, Adam went along with it too. So it's an appeal to man's most cherished idols: power, becoming smarter, better, superior to everyone else. This is the main appeal of liberalism, and why they so love to lord it over other people who disagree or don't see eye to eye. Now, the real danger in these dollar store elites is that they've trained leftists, these kids out there, to live for ideas and ideals that have no connection to surviving or thriving. In the old world, it was always a question if a society would survive. There was no modern medicine. There was no modern economy. But you never know when we're going to be back there. I mean, what if COVID wasn't 1 in 100? What if it was 50 in 100? We'd be, talking very seriously about having more kids in this society. Now, I have to ask you, how will we possibly make it? How will we survive during the next world crisis after we've forgotten how to fight, warm, farm, thrive, and pray? I will leave that to your rich imaginations to come up with an answer. Thank you for tuning in. Kelly O'Connell, Knockout Podcast. Hope you have a good day tomorrow, and we'll see you later. Ciao.